this isn't just about me, you know. I don't want to be doing all of this, or Stephen certainly doesn't want to be doing all of this, the other campaigners, you know. It's about Irish people, everybody standing up and be counted and actually take responsibility for your own health and ask questions and, you know, advocate for a better health system. We all have a responsibility to do that.
Hello, I'm Rory McKiernan and welcome to the Love and Courage podcast. A big thanks to all of you monthly and once-off patrons for supporting the podcast, and in particular to new monthly patrons Pat Ryan, Mairead Brady and Miffy Hode, and also to Ruth Maher and John Farley, who chipped in over at loveandcourage.org. It is because of the support of listeners like you, however small that might be, that I'm able to develop and promote this podcast, so you get to hear really great conversations with incredible people like the one you're about to hear. Folks, it's a real honour to be bringing you this very, very special interview with the wonderful Vicky Phelan. Named by the BBC as one of the most inspirational women in the world, she is certainly one of the most courageous people that I've ever met. Originally from County Kilkenny in the southeast of Ireland, Vicky is a Limerick-based married mother of two who has been at the forefront of exposing the Cervical Check screening scandal in Ireland after being told that she had been given incorrect smear test results. In early 2019, she settled a high-profile case with no admission of liability on the part of the laboratory or the health services involved, but she refused to sign a non-disclosure agreement that sought to silence her. The scandal has affected hundreds of women, and many of those who've been affected have since died. This is, without a doubt, one of the greatest scandals of modern Irish history and a tragic case study into truth, transparency, power and healthcare. At the time of doing this interview with Vicky, recorded in Doonbeg in County Clare in the west coast of Ireland, she had just recovered from a particularly difficult period of bad health and was very much still in treatment and facing a very challenging future. Despite this, she took time out to share her amazing life story in the hope that it will lead to much needed change in the health services and in wider society. The first half of this interview focuses on Vicky's early life, her upbringing, her childhood, her education, her early years and her formative stages, and it'll give you a much deeper insight into her recent courageous campaigning efforts in the face of huge adversity. Vicky really is a true beacon of love and courage, as you're about to hear in this interview. Vicky, thanks so much for joining me on the Love and Courage podcast. We're here on the beautiful west coast of Clare. I think, or I suspect that this is a special place for you. Can you tell me a bit about how you've ended up here and why you like it?
Yeah, it was a kind of a convoluted story really to how we ended up here in Doonbeg. We started coming here years ago. A friend of mine who I worked with in UL had a mobile home in Doonbeg. And one weekend, it was the Doonbeg Holiday weekend, and they had a jazz festival down here in Doonbeg that weekend. She said to me, Vicky, we're not going to be able to go down this weekend to Doonbeg. And at that stage, so we were young, carefree, no children, back in our 20s. And she said, do you want to go down for the weekend? Sure, Jesus, we were delighted. It wasn't going to cost us anything. Do you know what I mean? I was working, but sure, I was only working part-time at the time. So it suited us. We came down. Sure, I had no clue where it was. So I had to ask her how to get to it. And she told me about this beach. She said, make sure when you're there now, she said, go down to Dockmore Strand. She said, walk off the hangover. She said after, the weekend, she said, this beautiful beach, big, long, you get a lovely walk out of it. Gave me the directions. If she hadn't, I'd never have found it. And I remember when we came down that weekend, there was great crack in the village. It's a small village, it's not very big. Loads of people around. It was a fabulous weekend. I know, sometimes these things are all idyllic, in good weather and all of that, but it was. And we went for a walk on the beach. And I remember the first time I stepped onto that beach, oh my God, I don't know, it's just for me, it just took my breath away. It's my favourite place in the whole world. And from the very first day I saw it, it just did something for me. People say I'm not great at meditation or stuff like that, but for me the water, the sea, the sound of it, I need it in my life. I find it very calming. So that's how we kind of found it, and then we started coming down as often as we could. We'd rent houses. So we've been coming here for years.
I'm guessing that's increasingly important for you now, the reprieve and the healing power of nature. Absolutely. When you're in the midst of all the campaigning and medical treatment as well, just to have that.
Yeah, I suppose, people often ask me, what do you do to kind of wind down? And this is one of the things I make time for all of the time. I always come down here, and, if I'm frazzled at home, which I was last weekend after the communion, I said to my husband, go home, take the kids, I'm taking another day down here. I just need my time to myself. And I cleaned the house and I went down for a big long walk on the beach. And I'm fine then. That's what I need for me. And I'll sit down there, I'll have my walk done, and I'll sit up just watching the waves for maybe 10, 15 minutes, and I often close my eyes, and I suppose it's my form of meditation, and I'll just sit there and I'll soak it in, and that's all I need to kind of make me feel better about myself if things are stressful or if something's getting to me or if I'm worried. At the moment my treatment is, I've been sick for a good few weeks, and I'm kind of, like anybody with cancer, especially when it's terminal, you're always worried that God's going to come back. So this kind of just grounds me when I come back down here, and I get my walk on the beach and just listen to the sounds and watch the surfers. I just find it mesmerising, and it really, really just does it for me. And people are different. Not everybody would get the same thing out of that, but that's my healing, I suppose. Yeah.
When you close your eyes and look at the sea, do you have any particular kind of practice that did you do, or maybe it's personal to you and you don't want to talk about it necessarily, but people have different things that work for them, whether it be prayer or meditation. Is this something you've had for a long time, or is this a kind of a new process for you, or could you describe it at all?
I suppose I've always been very close to the water. When I was small, my mum and dad lived in a cottage down near the river where my father is from, and I only heard recently, actually, with this book I'm writing, my mother told me a story which I'd never heard, so the book has been a great thing because I found stuff out about myself I never knew. So my mother happened to tell me the story about me, wandering off at 3 years of age with the dog, me and the dog Bruce, down to the river. And that's where I'd go. Even at 3, I went down and I'd sit at the edge of the river, me and the dog. She often found me down there, me and the dog sitting at and the water lapping up, and like it was a strong current, but I never went into the water. But I just, obviously, even from an early age, just loved the water. So I suppose for me, I don't know, I've always found it, very soothing. And actually the wilder, the better. That's why I love it here, because, and I love that beach because it's so quiet, you could have it all to yourself. And that for me, I suppose I just really appreciate that rather than the kind of the really busy ones. And it's just even the sound of the waves. I just close my eyes and I try not to think about anything. I've done loads of these meditation read books to try and learn how to do it properly, but my mind races too much. I don't think I can really get into it properly, but I get into it enough for me to kind of not think about anything. So when I close my eyes, I just try and listen, and that's what I do. I just listen to the waves, and I just find it calms me, and that's as much as I do. I don't actually try and go anywhere with it, just kind of be present, really. And I think that's what we find people in general find very hard to do, is to be present in the moment, because you're always thinking, I have to do this or I have to do that. Yeah. And I'm certainly that type of person. I'm thinking 2 steps ahead.
Yeah. I'm struck by that image of you as the 3-year-old by the river. Can you describe your childhood a little bit for me, and what it was like growing up, and who was in the family, and what you were like as a child?
It was bedlam.
That's why you were in the river, at the river, was it?
I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and my mother and father got married very young. Like, Mum was 19 when she had me, so I'm 45 this year, and my parents were only 66 and 64. Do you know what I mean? It's great. I still have very young parents, and I really appreciate it. But obviously, because they were so young, and Mum had 3 of us kind of, bang, 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 one after the other. And, she struggled because they wouldn't have had much money, Mum and Dad. Dad only worked kind of part-time because at the time when we were very small anyway, all of his family would have fished, they fished the river down where we lived. And so he would never take a full-time job because it interfered with fishing. So he'd always have the fishing, and then he'd do odd jobs in between to kind of keep him going,
Love it.
Yeah, so my mother was always kind of tearing her hair out, I think, wishing he'd get a proper job. So there was constant money. So it was money was always an issue in our family.
Was he a bit of a dreamer?
He just loved the fishing, and, right. He just wouldn't let anything compromise that, I suppose. He just decided, that he most of the time he made enough money out of it to kind of tie them over for a while, but then there were lean months as well, and he wasn't. Yeah. And he's a carpenter, so, he'd always do a bit of work here and there. He's driving trucks now, that's what he does. He's nearly retired. He found the perfect job because he works at night time now. And
he's still fishing then?
He still goes off then and does his own thing then during the day. So he'd still go fishing during the season. Yeah.
And what kind of man is your dad in terms of the influence he might have had on you?
I think more the influence came from me, from my mother. My dad would have been great at encouraging me. You know, Dad was great that way. He'd always encourage you to go, do what you wanted to do. And he knew I wanted to go to college. And I would have been the first in my family to go to college back in the 90s. You know, we have a big family. I've got, Dad is one of 16. And I've got, I think, is it 95? It's mental anyway, 95 first cousins on his side of the family. It's crazy. I wouldn't know half of them. But even at, with that many of them, I was the first one to go to college, and it was a big deal back at the time. And Mum and Dad were so proud because none of them had, Mum had done her leaving cert. In fairness to her, she wanted to go off and do nursing, but, she wanted to marry Dad more than she wanted to nurse, and she had to make that choice, I suppose, because she would have had to go to England. But Dad kind of never did anything past the group cert, so he was always very, he never had any regrets necessarily, but, he was delighted to see that I wanted to make something of myself, I suppose. Mum would have been the one really that I would have she would have pushed me.
She was championing you.
Yeah, because she would have had us reading. Mum is a big reader and she's very intelligent. She'd do all the crosswords and she'd have words I wouldn't have a notion of myself even at this stage. She's really very bright, and often I think she kind of does regret that she didn't do something else. So I suppose when we were small, she was very adamant that, I was reading at the age of 3. She always read to us and made sure and instilled that kind of love of books in me anyway. Not so much in my brothers or my sister, but I loved it. I soaked it all up, and she always kind of said to me, make sure you do whatever you want to do. Don't let anyone. Not that Dad, we didn't tell her what to do or anything, but follow your own path basically. And if you want to go to college, you go to college. So Mum was really the one, I suppose, kind of very pushing without kind of trying to influence what I was going to do. But yeah, it was a mad childhood really, because God love her, my mother was in and out of the hospital more often with all of us because there was always something. She often says Jesus of social services were in action back then. She probably would have had children, no more than anyone else, taken off her because we were in and out of the hospital the whole time with bangs and scrapes and all of that, But we had a great childhood. We just, like anybody, I don't know about you, but I found we were just off out in the fields. We'd have our food, come back for something to eat, and we'd be gone again. She wouldn't see us for the day.
Yeah,
it was great.
I definitely
great freedom.
had very similar in rural Cavan, lots of tree houses and fortresses.
My father would kill us. We'd take off his hammers and his whatever, and we'd never bring them back. And oh Jesus, we'd get killed. But we'd be hammering it all, making it all ourselves,
Yeah. It's a good childhood, isn't it? There's I often quote this study, which I should get the proper reference for it, but it documents how kids are less and less free now, but there's often a perceived fear that doesn't always exist. Now there are real safety issues, of course, but that idea of the kid roaming from a longer distance from the house, incrementally over the years that has diminished to where kids almost in some cases don't leave the house at all.
Yeah, I know, and I find that very hard actually with my own kids. We live in a small estate, so we have a green out the front, and until Dara was about, he's nearly 8, he's 8 now, but until he was, God, I'd say nearly 6 really, I would have stood outside, watch, do you know what I mean? And it's terrible that you have to do that, and I felt that I had to, and I always kind of thought, Jesus, my mother kind of, now in fairness, with us when we were younger, we always went off in packs. There was loads of us together, so I suppose that was it. My mother knew we were all, she'd never have left any of us off on our own, but there was always at least 10 or 12 of us gone off together, so safety in numbers and all of that, I suppose. But I do feel now, once he got old enough and sensible enough, I kind of thought, no, you have to leave them go. So he goes out in the green, and all I say to him is, if you're going to somebody's house, just tell me. So he does have that bit more freedom, because I say that to some parents and you can see the faces, they're kind of going, you let him out on his own, and they're, yes, it's outside the front, I can actually see him every now and then. I might look out, but I don't anymore because I trust him. Because usually he's out playing soccer, or if he is going to go to a pal's house, he will come in and tell me, because he gets in trouble if he doesn't. And that's, I think, I had that freedom as a child, and I think it's great. You want them to have that freedom, because otherwise they're going to start panicking and worrying about things unnecessarily when really, they should be able to just play.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about you as a teenager then. Was there any sense, because you've since become, let's say, quite the leader, Was there any sign of you being that leader in the early days? Like, were you outspoken?
I was always bossy.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, I'm the oldest of 5. And, you know, by the time my sister came along, there's nearly 11 years between me and my sister. So I have 3 brothers, and I was a real tomboy because I had 3 brothers, and then my sister came along when I was 11. And, you know, Mum went back to work before she had my sister. And I was in primary school, and I was coming home from primary school probably at 10, you know, 5th class, 6th class, making dinners. Do you know what I mean? Because Mum had to go to work and Dad wasn't back from work. So, you know, she'd leave out whatever had to be put on, and I'd turn the dinner on and, you know, get it all ready and make sure the lads had their homework done. So, you know, I suppose I was given that role from an early stage. But even with my friends, they'd all tell you the same thing. You know, I've always been bossy. I've always been the kind of the one that will... I'm very competitive, you know. We used to play rounders. Did you play rounders?
Yeah.
Great game. It's like, and you don't see many people playing it now.
Yeah.
We used to play rounders, but of course I'd get very competitive about it. So, you know, we'd often end up in rows, you know, over little small things, and that was, you know, the competitive edge kind of coming out. And that comes from my father. My father's desperate. He's very competitive. You know, he'd always even... Give you an example. I used to play badminton. Myself and my best friend played badminton, and we played badminton for the Kilkenny team. We were good, you know. And my father always said, sure, you know, he'd be telling me what to do, and he'd never played the game in his life. He'd come and watch these matches. And I said to him one day, do you know what, since you know so bloody much about it, I'll play you, and let's just see what you know. Do you know, and he thought that, you know, he said, yeah, no bother. So I booked the hall up the road where we trained, and I said, right, and I thought to myself, I'm going to kill myself now to make sure he doesn't get more than 1 point or 2 points. And I did. I whooped his ass, you know, and he had to admit at that point. He did, you know. I said, see, it's easy for you to stand back and say you should be doing this, you should be doing that. I said, but play the game, I said, and see, you know.
Yeah.
So he learned a lesson that day, you know, that don't try and tell me what to do in a sport you've never played before. You know, it'd be like me to tell him what to do in golf, you know, which he plays. So. Yeah. But my father will be a bit like that, very competitive now, you know, and that kind of all knocked on all of us, really.
Yeah,
you know?
and it has its benefits as well.
It does, yeah. I mean, look, that's what you have to do, you know. Life, unfortunately, is like that, you know, life is not fair. You know, you have to fight your way, you have to fight your corner in every aspect between, you know, as a sibling growing up, in school with peers, you know, if you're getting bullied. So, you know, yeah, I think it's a good thing for children to kind of learn to be assertive without being, you know, and it's that kind of balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a balance.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't end up in a compulsive competitiveness or an unhealthy competitiveness, but there is an edge there that is needed in life.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that speaks to resilience as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
What about then, you mentioned going to college and being the first in the family. What was it that you chose to do and why, or did you have a sense of direction at that point? I
didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I had a really good teacher. Like, she was just, you know, a huge influence in my life, and I mentioned her in a couple of things when I got the honorary fellowship in WIT. You know, I thanked her because she was absolutely influential in my life.
What was her name?
Miss Keys, Breathe Keys. Very hard to call her first name, you know, even.
Yeah.
It's stupid, you know. You go,
is she still alive?
Oh, she is, yeah, she's still alive. I've met her a good few times since. And she gets so embarrassed. She said, "Oh, Vicky, you know, for God's sake, stop." And I said, "No," because...
And she's probably done that for a lot of people as well, and often maybe doesn't get thanks.
No, that's it, you know. And I think for me, she could see clearly, you know, because we've had this conversation, we've spoken about it. And I said to her, like, what did you see in me that you just, you know? And she said, well, I could see that you were extremely bright, she said, and that you had, you know, great ability, but that you didn't believe in yourself. And she said, I knew, you know, from your family that nobody had gone to college. So I thought you just needed a bit of encouragement, because I don't think without her encouragement, I probably would have went to the local college, which would have been fine, into WIT, but she wanted me to, you know, go to university, and, you know, she had picked out courses and everything. She gave me the prospectuses for UL and for DCU, and she basically said to me, I think you should go, now without telling me to, you know, said go to all the open days, make up your own mind, but I think these two universities, whichever one you go for, would suit you better, because they were all that continuous assessment. Wasn't like, you know, at the end of the year. And she said to me, because you're very bright, Vicky, she said, but you can tend to be a bit lazy, so this will keep you on your toes. So do you know what I mean? It's mad. So I just said, oh, right, okay. And she was my French teacher and my English teacher, and that was my strength, really, was my languages. So that's what I did. I studied, it was a kind of a broad degree, European studies, and I specialised then. So you could either specialise in law, politics, languages, what was the other one? Public administration. That was it. So there was 4 kind of streams, and I did the languages one.
And you mentioned, you referenced a hangover at one stage in your 20s. I'm wondering, was it a boozy college time?
God, yes, absolutely. Look,
as is common.
Yeah. And you know what? I think it's a rite of passage that, my sister. I often have this conversation with my sister because my sister's a hairdresser. She never went to college. Not that she didn't. She did plenty of drinking anyway in her day, but I just think, and she often says that herself, she feels like she missed out because she didn't move away. I do think, it is something I certainly feel that it made me grow up very fast because I had to learn how to feed myself. Not that, I was well able to cook dinners, but like to manage money and to, kind of make it stretch for the week. And, you're living on beans and toast until the grant comes in, and, with no heating in the houses we're living in. Like, it's not like these days the students are living in lovely, nice, warm houses. We didn't have that. We were living in these kips, and you were wearing like layers to keep yourself warm and eating beans and toast or spaghetti bolognese, and that was cheap, so that you have enough money at the end of the week to go out for the few pints on the Thursday night, So I had absolutely. I tell you one thing, if I could choose a point in time to go back to, it would be college. I loved it. I just loved the freedom of living away from home, no responsibilities, no mortgages, no children, none of that. And I loved going to college. If I could be an eternal student and go to college for the rest of my life, I'd be happy out. I loved college, loved everything about it. I obviously missed a few days, no more than anybody else, but I didn't miss a huge amount because I just loved learning, I still do. God, over the years since I finished and since I've been working, I've done, a couple of masters and online courses. I've always had that interest in learning,
What were the masters you did?
I did a master's in management and education, so I'd finished that just after my son was born, and then I had started a master's in online learning, because that would be a big thing with me where I work. So distance learning and using technology to kind of enhance how you learn. I find it fascinating. And I had started that just before my daughter had her accident, and I'd done 2 modules, I think, and I just had to pack it in then. So, unfortunately, life took over at that stage, so I had to just pack it in.
So tell me about your working life then, post-college, and how did the 20s play out into your 30s, and where did you meet the love of your life?
So what happened then was I finished my degree in 97, and I went straight into, which now in hindsight I realise, was a bad move, and if I had known at the time, I could have taken a year's leave of absence and defer my place just to kind of think about it. I probably would have. But at the time I was getting a scholarship, so again I wouldn't have been able to afford the fees, so I took it. So I went from finishing my degree, because I had done such a good final year project, my supervisor asked me to start a PhD because that was what I was good at. And that's what I found. I loved research. I got got all A's in my final year project. I got an award for it. It was so good at the time from the French embassy, because I'd done it on French, an aspect of the French language. And so anyway, got a scholarship and I started that. But, I was too young. I was 22, 23. And, I was at it for about 2 years. And sure, like that now you're...
It's very young to do a PhD,
very young to
isn't
start a PhD,
Yeah.
And I would always say that people would often ask me now, and students would come to me and say, no, get a bit of life experience first and go back. And at the time, I remember when I did kind of make the decision to pack it in, I felt like such a failure because I'm so competitive and because I was always high achieving. I kind of thought, Jesus Christ, I haven't, how can I not finish this? Do you know what I mean? But and it killed me for years, that failure, it really did. I just always felt that, that I failed at something, and I never failed at anything. So it was a tough lesson, but, now I feel so much better about it now. There's more important things to worry about, but, I realise now I was just too young at the time, really, and I just felt all my friends were off work and earning loads of money, and I was still the flipping broke student, do you know what I mean? Because I was teaching first years, which I hated because they didn't even have any interest in learning. All they wanted to do was know what was in the exam, and I just thought, this is not what I thought it was going to be, So I did that for a couple of years, worked a bit, doing a bit of tutoring, and then I got a part-time job out in the airport. Actually, it was actually a very interesting job. I worked in an air charter company, so I was doing that for 20 hours a week.
Which airport is this now?
Out in Shannon
Okay.
Airport. But the hours it was like 6 a.m. to 2, and I did it 3 days a week. I think it was 3 days a week. So it was a bit of extra money, and it was fascinating. Actually, I was chartering aircraft, and it was actually quite stressful because some of the things you were chartering, you were putting millions in insurance, and it was, so it was kind of an introduction, I suppose, to the working world, and and I liked it, and I liked the fact that I had money, so I kind of got a taste of it then, and I thought, no, I don't know. I can't see myself kind of living in the academic world now for much longer. So a job came up then in the international office in UL, and because of my language background, my supervisor, actually my PhD supervisor, said to me, I think you should go for it, Vicky. And in fairness, she didn't say it in such a way as if kind of, but it was probably, now we've had a chat about it since because we're still quite friendly. She kind of said she knew my heart was not in the PhD, and that was her way of kind of, giving me an out, I suppose, So I applied for the job and I got it, and I did that for 3 years then, and I loved it. So I was managing all the, Erasmus, so our students do the exchange programs between universities. So I was managing the Erasmus program for the UL, and UL would have one of the largest European exchange programs in Europe, actually. They're huge. And when I took on the job, somebody had been doing it before me. I was only doing it part-time, so I kind of started it off, and it grew. We had massive numbers, but I really enjoyed it, and it was a good bit of travel, which was great, especially again in your 20s, travelling over to different European countries kind of to meet with staff in different universities. So I would have seen countries that I wouldn't have gone to, Finland, Norway. So I tended to go to those kind of countries that I mightn't have gone on holidays to, and I would have had a lot of people coming over entertaining them because we were very popular and people wanted to exchange agreements with us. So that was great. I really enjoyed the job, actually. Really loved it.
I can see how all your campaigning and organisational skills now that I'm really
where
seeing.
They come from.
There's a lot there in
Yeah.
education, research, connection, communication, mobilising groups and so on. And so then, where did you stay at the UL, or where did you go from there?
So then, I left UL then after 3 years because we moved home then to get married. So I had met Jim, my husband. How we got to know each other was my brother was going out with Jim's sister for 9 years, and so we would have known each other kind of, from seeing each other in the pubs kind of at the time, and I'd have had absolutely no interest in him, in the beginning. We'd see each other in the pub and whatever. I knew who he was.
What's his take on that?
Oh, same thing.
Right, okay.
Pretty much the same thing. And I don't know how. I think the first night we actually met, that we actually, shifted, as we would say. I don't know what they say now, but that's what we would say. Yeah. I brought him home because I was driving. I had a car at that stage. So I had a really bad car accident in 1994. And this was 1996. Yeah, 2 years later. So I was after buying a car, because I was, I'd had a really bad car crash, was in hospital for a long time, and one of the big things I wanted to do when I came out of hospital was to learn how to drive, because I knew if I didn't, I'd never get back in a car again. So, and I got compensation out of the car crash, which was very, I think, God, I don't know, what did I get, £60,000, I think, or something at the time, which was grand, but it wasn't a huge amount of money. But it kept me going through college, and I got the car, and, I didn't have to worry about having a part-time job then for the summer to try and keep myself going in college for the year. So it was great, because I went back to college then after my car crash, and I really just kind of put the head down and studied for third year and fourth year then, but I met Jim, obviously, this one night I was driving home. So at the time I wasn't really drinking a huge amount, because after my car crash I didn't really drink a lot for a good few years, because I would have had flashbacks and all of that, because the car crash happened on a night out and whatnot. So I was very much in control. I had to be driving, so I'd be the designated driver. Sure, the friends thought this was brilliant, like Vicky will drive us home. So I was bringing a few of them home that night, and it was Paddy's night, 1996, and Jim ended up, because I was bringing my brother home obviously, so he tagged along, and that's how we kind of met. And he kind of pursued it. I had no interest. I just thought, no, Jesus, no, I'm going back to college, I haven't time for this, And I kept putting him off there. No, I'm in third year now. No way, I won't. And he was there, when are you back? And I was there, geez, this is March. I was there, I won't be back home again till May. It's like, and I was really, and it's not, and this is exactly the way I would have said it to him. Oh God, no, I've projects. Jesus, I won't be home till May. And he was sure I'll come up. I said, no, you won't. No way. I said, I'm studying. I said, you just have to wait. And that was kind of the way it started off. So he kind of pursued it for a long time. If he probably hadn't been as, what would you call it, adamant and kind of stubborn and kept at it, I probably would have just left it. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm that type of person. I'm very single-minded. If I'm doing something, I'm doing something. That's it.
So is he a good kind of counterpoint to that? Does he provide a balance?
Oh, he does. Yeah, he's very calm. I can be very highly strung and very, things would get to me, whereas Jim is very horizontal. And you need that. I think it's like any relationship. Everybody, you have to find that balance, because if you have two very highly strung people, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I always found that he'd kind of be great for, and he mightn't just say anything, but I'll have my vent. I'll say what I need to say and he'll just sit there and nod, and he might say one or two things, but that's all you need, so it worked, I suppose.
He sounds like he has a kind of a groundedness to him that helps keep things together, because obviously you've been through so many kind of hurricanes almost in the last few years. But you mentioned your daughter's accident as well. That was really the first. People often ask me when they meet me, how are you doing what you're doing? How can you keep campaigning, and why didn't how can you keep going and be so positive? But you see, I suppose before all of this, I've had so many other things that have happened that you just, like the car crash was the first thing, I suppose, was the first big thing that happened in my life that really made me realise, oh God, I'm not invincible and life is not fair, and these things, they either make you or they break you, I suppose. And at the time, I had to grow up very fast after the car crash. I lost 3 friends. I was in hospital for nearly 4 months, broke 70% of the bones and the left hand side of my body. I was, had a lot of rehab for a long time. Had to take a year out of college, and that really, it shapes you, something like that. You see the fragility of life, at a very young age. I was only 19, so, kind of, for a long time I was very resentful, I suppose, that I kind of had to grow up so fast and, not enjoy life as much as, others, I suppose. But, I learned how to, like anybody, you learn how to deal with it and how to live with it, and you move on, So that was the first thing, I suppose. But then Amelia, before Amelia's accident, Amelia was born. When I was pregnant with Amelia, we discovered that there was something wrong with her. So she was born with a congenital disorder. So it's called toxoplasmosis. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Most people don't, unless you're talking to farmers. Sheep farmers know what it is. So it's a parasitic infection. So basically, the worst case scenario is your child will be born blind and brain damaged. And we didn't know, we found out about this about 6 weeks before I was, no, actually more than 6 weeks before I was due, but I ended up being induced early that there was going to be something wrong, and they weren't going to be able to tell us what was wrong, like how bad she was going to be, until she was born. So that's an awful stress, knowing that there's going to be something wrong with your child, but you actually are not going to know how bad it is until she comes out. So that was the second thing, I suppose, that really was an awful period of my life. It was the first time, I suppose, after the car crash, because I was so much younger, I was able to deal with it, and I kind of bounced back because I was young. I was able to do all the rehab. I did a lot of swimming, and I did all the physical stuff, but I never dealt with the emotional side of it. I never went for counselling, considering what had happened. But it came back to bite me then when I had my daughter. So after Amelia was born, and we knew what we were dealing with then, and she does have a visual impairment. She did have scarring on her brain, which resulted in epileptic seizures a couple of years ago at the start of puberty. So we knew this was going to be a kind of she was going to be a lot of work, which she was. First 2 years of her life, I was up and down to Crumlin every 6 weeks. I was in the local hospital in Waterford, 3 times a week for the first year. Not what you want with your first baby. Do you know what I mean? So I found that very hard, and that was the first time in my life, I suppose, that I experienced depression. So I got very bad postnatal depression after having Amelia, which lasted for about 2 years, I'd say, kind of until, and I went into the GP, and and I couldn't believe it, I suppose. I just thought, tablets, that's all you're going to give me, antidepressants, there must be something else, because I would have been the type kind of, not that I'd be very holistic, but I thought there was other stuff that they'd say, you need to try this, you need to try that. And all the GP was kind of willing to give me was antidepressants, and I thought, no, I don't really want to do that. There must be other ways. And I started on the antidepressant, and I just found it just made me darker, and I just thought, no, I'm coming off that. So I came off it, and I thought, right, I'm going to have to look at other ways of dealing with this. So I started reading, which is what I do, and researching, and acupuncture. So I started doing acupuncture, and I started running. So anything I read about depression said if you can try and find something, to kind of get your endorphins going. So I started running, and I found that actually helped to, make me feel better for a while. And once I started running, then I thought, well, sure, again, like other things in my life, I thought, sure, I may as well train for a marathon. I'd only started, I'd say 6 months, and I said, I'm going to do a marathon now. And I started training for a marathon. And that, you see, I'm the type of person, I have to have a goal, an end, and it has to be big, So I started training, and I did my marathon. I trained for a year and a half, and I was consistent. I was out running 5 days a week, and it was great. It kept me out of my head for very long periods of time, and it definitely helped to deal with the depression, that and the acupuncture.
And then, you know, there's nearly 5.5 years in between my daughter and my son, and there's a reason for that, because A, she was so sick as a baby, and they told me I couldn't get pregnant for 2 years, and I said, there's no hope of that anyway. And B, because, you know, she needed the time, and I just thought, you know, I can't have another child now until I know she's some way, you know, in the clear. So, and also because I thought, Jesus, you know, from everything I'd read, I thought if I go get pregnant again, I'm probably going to have postnatal depression, because if you have it on one, they say there's a chance you will, fairly high chance that you will get it again. And that really put me off. I nearly didn't get pregnant again, you know. By the time I actually did get pregnant with Dara, I was very close to not doing it. And it was my mother who talked me out of it, actually, because she could see as the time was going on. And, you know, it's very hard as a mother, you know, to interfere in your children's sex life, I suppose, and, you know, how many children they have. But Mum could see. She said, look, Vicky, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. She said, but I just don't want you to regret not having another child. She said, because, you know, it'll be good. She said, you just don't have that experience of having a child, coming home when there's nothing wrong with them, and just having that normal kind of experience of having your baby and coming home and enjoying it. You know, with Amelia, it was all hospitals. You know, she was in hospital for the first 2 weeks of her life, and it was just very stressful.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I kind of thought, oh, right, okay, I'll just bite the bullet. So
Yeah.
I did. So I got pregnant and had Dara, and you know what? It was a lovely experience. He was a big, healthy baby, huge. Like, for me, he was huge compared to Amelia. He was 8 pounds 10, and she was only that size by the time she was 3 months. Do you know what I mean? So he was a big baby. But yeah, no, I did get postnatal depression on him, but because I knew and I recognised it when it came, I was able to deal with it better.
Yeah.
But I did get it, and it took me about 2 years again to kind of get through that.
So I can see that, well, I sense that there's a story about self-advocacy emerging here, where you had a lot of experience in hospitals and in the medical system, and particularly when you talked about postnatal depression, you did take matters into your own hands to a large extent.
Yeah.
Has that been... Well, I suppose it's obviously been a big part of your current journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that ability to trust yourself, and you also talked about earlier your teacher, you know, fostering that sense of self-belief in you. Do you sense that whole thing coming together for you to have that confidence to take matters into your own hands, to challenge those that say they have more knowledge or more authority? Yeah,
I suppose, you know, I've never been afraid of anybody. I think that's one of the things that I've never been afraid of anybody, you know, going back a long time. And I think the first time, I suppose, I started, particularly with the medical profession, the first time I started challenging them was back after my car crash. So when I had my car accident, it happened in France. And, you know, that was my first experience of another system where things actually work better. So, you know, I remember I was in hospital over there for 5.5 or 6 weeks. And before I was left go home, and I was stretchered home because I'd broken ribs and my femur and my collarbone, so I couldn't sit up. So I was literally stretchered back on a plane. But before I left the hospital, you know, all of the different doctors, so I had a, you know, orthopedic surgeon, I had a cosmetic surgeon because I broke my nose, broke my face, you know, my cheekbones, and they'd sew me up, you know, and I had damage to my eye, so he came around. Then I was also a medical surgeon because I had internal bleeding, so I had damage to my kidneys, and I don't know, there was 5 different guys, or the eye guy, yeah, so there was an eye guy and somebody else. They all came to my, and I mean, this is unheard of even in this day and age in Ireland, you know, they all came to my room, so I was in my own private room, for the whole 5.5 weeks I was in hospital over there. In the last week, say, before I got transferred back to Ireland, and every one of those doctors came and sat down with me for probably 20 minutes, half an hour, and went through what they had done, what the kind of, you know, long-term effects, short-term effects, and particularly the orthopedic guy, I suppose he knew where I was going back to. He kept saying to me, you are not to sit up for another 2 weeks or you will damage your pelvis, because I'd shattered my, if you think about the position of a seatbelt, the seatbelt broke everything, you know, like that, you know, all the way down from my shoulder, across that way, and then across my lap. So it broke everything. My pelvis was very badly shattered. And he said, you cannot sit up, he said, for another 2 weeks. And he said, and then when you're sitting up, you will not be standing out on your legs, because I damaged on my left leg, for another, I don't know, whatever it was, another 3 weeks. And he'd, you know, all of this was put into a report, but of course it was all in French, coming back with me, so they would have had to get that translated. So that obviously, you know yourself, that all obviously took time when I came back to Ireland. But I remember the day I came back, like kind of late in the evening into the hospital, and the day after, this orthopedic surgeon came around to my bed, and my dad was sitting in the seat beside me this morning, And he looked at the report, the file, you know, down at the end of my bed, you know, your chart or whatever. Right, like this kind of, you know, rubbing his hands together. I'll have the physio around here tomorrow. We'll have you out of that bed tomorrow. And I said, no, you won't. And he kind of looked, you know, as if kind of, you know, I thought, am I hearing things? Because he wasn't even looking at me when he said that. He kind of was just nearly almost with his back to me, looking at the chart. And the nurse, the sister on the ward, whatever they're called now, was standing beside him. And I said, and I said it again. I said, no, I won't. And he said, excuse me. And I said, well, I'm going to go with the doctor who did the procedures on me in France. I said, and he told me under no circumstances am I to even sit up. Never mind get out of this bed, I said, for another, you know, however many weeks. And your man just looked at me. I said, I'll translate the file for you if you want. I said, I speak fluent French. I said, but I'm not getting up. I said, there is no way I'm getting out of this bed. I said, until. And I gave him the dates. Well, he turned on his heel and marched out of that ward. The sister went hot on his heels after him, and she came back and had a go at me about the way I spoke to him. And I said, hang on a minute here now. I said, this is my body. I said, and I'm not a child. I'm 19. I can speak for myself. Because she was looking at my father, who was almost kind of cringing, you know, in one respect. But at the same time, he probably thought, well, fair play to her. Do you know what I mean? Because he wouldn't have done that, you know. But that was that was the way it was. And I mean, we hopped off each other, myself and this orthopaedic surgeon, you know, before I left hospital. And I was in there for nearly 3.5 months. He brought my mum and dad in for a meeting before I was being discharged and basically told them, because it was written, he even wrote in a report that I had an attitude problem. I lost 3 of my friends, including a boyfriend, in an accident. And I had all these injuries, and all he could see that I had an attitude problem because I wouldn't do what I was told, basically, you know. So I stuck to my guns, and, you know.
Isn't that what bullies do?
Oh, totally.
They turn on the victim and reverse the psychology.
Yeah, totally. And I suppose that was my first, I suppose, foray into kind of, you know, standing up for myself. I mean, I'd always stood up for myself anyway, but this was kind of against, you know, an authority figure, really.
There's a lot going on in that incident, in terms of all the symbolism and particularly the genders as well.
Yeah.
And it feels like the medical establishment, obviously the disproportionately nurses tend to be female and are largely heroic by all accounts, but the system at large and the control of the system does seem to be dominantly male, and that sort of paternalistic, controlling, dominant attitude. Like, I think just from a personal anecdotes have encountered many positive examples, but that sort of patronising disregard, I've noticed it amongst family and how people are treated, and there may be class dimensions to it as well.
I think so, yeah. And I, you know, I mean, I'm from a working class background, you know, and I would never, you know, I've always admitted that some people are uncomfortable, you know, admitting that they're, you know, and I find that difficult in Ireland, that people are embarrassed about where they're from. I mean, so what, you know, I did well for myself, went off and got educated, but I'm proud of the fact that I'm from a working class
Most of us are.
You know? Yeah, exactly. But I found in college now, I came up against a lot of people who were clearly, you know, from similar backgrounds to me, but just would not even go there, you know, wouldn't admit to that. And I think he saw that surgeon, you know, he thought I was going to be this, you know, easy kind of walkover because I wouldn't have come from a background that, you know, I wonder often, you know, with these people, if you know, my parents had been lawyers or if my parents had been doctors, would he have spoken to me the way he did? Do you know what I mean? I often wonder that. And that's probably why he saw me as having an attitude problem. It's what he expected because, you know, I was from this, you know, working class background, you know.
And also in terms of the ethos around that somebody else, obviously we do kind of at some level have to respect people's training and expertise. Yes. But when you talked about like, it's my body, I mean, that's a very current statement as well, in light of the referendum and so on.
Absolutely. And, you know, one of the other things he did to me as well, you know, this wasn't on the same day, but it was, you know, probably a couple of weeks later, and again, this is something I didn't know that I had any right to. My best friend is a nurse and she said it to me. So he used to come around with his entourage every day, or, you know, on his rounds, and he'd come to my bed and, you know, it'd be different doctors, different junior doctors he'd have, and they'd kind of come around, and I had this procedure done. The pin that was put in my leg where I broke it was totally new. They'd never seen this, you know, so you can imagine I was a bit of a guinea pig because I'd come from a really good teaching hospital apparently, you know, so that's what saved me. And Jesus, if I had my accident somewhere else, I often think I'd definitely have a limp. I wouldn't be walking as good, never mind running, you know. So he used to come around with his entourage every morning, and I was finding it difficult just to deal with the aftermath of everything. And he'd come along and say, road traffic accident, and he, about how many died and injuries, and I just thought, Jesus. And I remember saying to my best friend, I said, "Oh my God, I'm worn out." But he comes around every day, and they're pulling back the blankets, having a look like I'm a piece of meat. Do you know what I mean? And she said to me, "Oh, Vicky, you don't have to put up with that." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Did he ask you?" Again, it goes back to knowledge, isn't it? And information is power. She said, "Did he ever ask you, was it okay? Did you give him permission for him to kind of basically be treated as a test, this case study for all of his junior doctors?" I said, "Jesus, no." I said, "Did he ask me what?" I said, "No." Well, she said, "You can refuse to have, you can tell him that you are not giving him permission to bring all the entourage around." So I thought, now I could have done it. I know I could have done it in a nicer way, but I thought, no, you didn't give me that courtesy. And I could have taken him aside without the entourage there and said it to him, and not embarrassed him. But I thought, no, fuck you. So I said it in front of the entourage the next morning, whenever. And I said, "Excuse me, doctor," whatever his name was. And he kind of turned, and I said, "You never asked me permission to, bring your junior doctors," I said, "here every morning on your rounds." I said, "And I said, I'm not giving you permission to do this any longer." I said, "I don't want this." I said, "So, I'm just telling you now." I said, "Do not come back here." I said, "I don't appreciate this at all." Well, he was like a demon. And I could see the smirks on some of the doctors' faces, because they're all like, my age, some of them 20, 21. And they had a little smirk, because I'd say a lot of them didn't like him, because he was an awful man. Well, he just slammed down the chart and stormed off. And again, sent the sister in. She had a go at me. And I said, "No, this is my body." I said, "I have every right." I said, "I know my rights." I said, "It's pity you didn't tell me what my rights were." I said, "But I'm telling you now." I said, "I do not want him at my bed again."
Do you think that was an early test ground for the bigger battle that has since been?
Yeah, probably. I suppose, I've always, unfortunately, I've had so much experience, and not all bad either. I mean, this is the thing. People think I'm totally anti the medical establishment. I'm not. I mean, my daughter has a congenital disorder, and her care has been absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
So, but at the same time, I'm still having at times to fight for her. I'm her advocate because I'm her mother, and she can't advocate for herself. So throughout her illness over the last 13 years, there have been at times where I've had to fight for her. So I've been doing this for years, just on a smaller scale, I suppose. So to me, what I did, even though people say to me, "Oh my God, how did you do it and how did you take them on?" I've been doing this for years. This is just another, I don't see it as any different to what I've been doing all my life. It's just on a bigger scale, and I'm doing it for other people. That's all, I suppose. And I never balked, and I never thought, "Oh God, this is bigger than me."
People often say that you do your advocacy and campaigning with great dignity, and to do that, it feels like you've somehow managed to, if you have anger, you've managed to channel it. Like you don't let it spill over.
No, it doesn't get you anywhere. See, I suppose I've worked in the public sector all my life, and I've learned, that there's a certain way that you have to be to get things done. Spouting and shouting and, bitching is actually gets you nowhere. You actually have to come up with solutions, or you have to find ways to get things done. And sometimes you have to deal with people you don't actually like or you don't get on with, but you can't get around them. So you have to, you have to find creative ways sometimes to get things done. And that's what I've had to do. I suppose I've just kind of used all of those skills that I've learned over the years, and from working in the public sector and dealing with people, who make decisions. At the end of the day, unfortunately, there are people who are making decisions who, they're not on your side, but you have to try and get some middle ground somewhere and find some way of getting things done, because otherwise they don't take you seriously if you don't if you can't actually meet them halfway sometimes. And if you have to respect them, you might not like them, but at the same time I do understand in some respects with some of the people that I'm dealing with that their hands are tied to a certain extent. So you kind of have to try and find out how to get around it. It was like with the Pembro, trying to get access to Pembro for other women. I mean, that, myself and Alan Kelly, TD, we came up with that kind of, what would you call it? I suppose PR stunt, really, by going on Clare Byrne Live. we kind of said, well, if people, watching this will see, me and another woman, two of us have the exact same disease, but I'm getting it and she's not, pressure works, and we know that, you know what I mean, that unfortunately you have to go that. And I remember I did give Simon Harris the heads up. I texted him before we went on Clare Byrne. I said, look, I'm just letting you know because we have a good relationship, and in fairness he will let me know if something's coming down the line, so I give him the same thing, it's respect. So I said to him, look, I'm going on Clare Byrne Live tonight with Alan, campaigning for Pembroke. I said, you know how I feel about this. I feel very strongly that this drug should be given to all women with cervical cancer. I said, I know this is going to cause major headaches for you. I said, but I have to do this. This is wrong, that I'm getting it and these women are not. I said, so I'm just telling you, this is coming down the road. And he appreciates that, because he knows, that I can't stand back and watch, and for these things not to happen, So, there's a bit of push and pull, I suppose, a lot of the time,
And in your particular situation where you found out that, is it fair to say you've been lied to and that there have been cover-ups and that people have known things about you and your body that they didn't reveal? For another human being to face that knowledge, like I've heard other women talk about how they spiraled from there into depression and whatever else. Like, on an emotional level, is this where you have to look at the sea? Like, where do you take all of that?
Yeah, I suppose, for me, I found out back in September 2017 about the audit. And I actually had to park it at the time because Amelia was really ill, not really ill, but she nearly lost her eyesight twice that year with episodes of reactivation of this parasite at the back of her eye. We had been to Moorfields in London for a second opinion because she had to have laser surgery that year. So I had more than enough going on at the time, even though I knew there was something fishy about it and I knew there was something wrong, and I just knew my gynecologist was being very vague. I had to park, and I said it to him, I said, I actually can't deal with this at the moment. I said, and I told him, and he knew about my daughter. I said, Amelia's had a reactivation. I said, we're kind of really keeping an eye on her at the moment, but I will be coming back to it. I did say that to him. I said, I will be coming back to this. I said, but I did say to him at the time, I said, look, at the moment, on that particular day, I didn't know I had cancer back, but I said, I'm happy that I'm cancer free. I said, but I will have to take this further, but I'm just not in that headspace. So, he had decided, that day, he said, right, I'm going to send you for a scan. And that's when I decided, once I had the scan, then 2 months later, and then found out that this was back, then I realised, oh God, I'm going to have to do something about this now. And I suppose for me, because I knew about the audit going back to September 2017, my court case didn't come up till the following April 2018. So by the time all of this story hit the headlines in the end of April, start of May, I had 6-7 months to kind of process my feelings about it, which weren't great. So a lot of the women, I suppose, who were hearing about it through the media and all of that, and there's still a lot of angry women, through our support group, an awful lot of angry women out there. But I suppose in my case, I've been down that road of being angry, and I know where that goes. If I get very angry about something and it gets to me, it goes into depression. I really go down a very slippery slope very fast. So I kind of have to not go there. And it's not that I'm not dealing with it, I just have to go elsewhere with it. I have to do stuff.
You channel it.
I channel it, which is why I've done all what I've done, because I thought I have to make this better. When I knew there were, so that's why I took the court case. I thought, right, I have to get answers. So that was my way of dealing with it without going into myself, And then when I realised, through the process of the court case, that there were other women, I got really angry. I thought, oh, Jesus Christ, there are other women involved. This is even worse. And then I thought, well, I can't lose it now. I have to, and that's what made me fight to kind of make sure that this went public. And then, of course, when it came out, and then you're dealing with all the media and all of the, it kind of made it, I found it very cathartic, I suppose, being able to talk about it, because that's the type of person I am. And that's one of the reasons I wouldn't sign the non-disclosure agreement. I couldn't keep my mouth shut. It's as simple as that. I wouldn't have been able to keep my mouth shut about it. And I knew if I had signed a non-disclosure agreement, if there had not been other women, that I would have found it very hard to deal with that, and I knew I'd probably spiral back into a depression because, you know, I wouldn't be able to talk about this thing that happened, you know. So there were various reasons why I didn't sign it. But obviously when I discovered that there were other women, that was it for me. There was no other way around it, you know. But yeah, you know, anger. I mean, I still get angry. I mean, Jesus, I mean, I'm only human like anybody else, but I suppose I'm better at channeling it than I used to be.
When you think about these lawyers and whether they be medical establishment, legal establishment, or political establishment that are engaged in the cover-up of truth, essentially, do you have this sense of, like, you know, right down to its bare basic core fundamentals of right and wrong, light and dark? It feels like there's almost, I never really used the word evil. I'm not sure where I stand with that, but it's darkness. Like, that people are spending their time engaged in cover-ups and silencing and control, and what you're engaged is the opposite, is putting the light all over it. It's big stuff, for want of a much better phrase.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, it's funny, people often say to me, you know, and maybe it's just as well that I don't think things through. I'm very impulsive, I suppose, which is a good thing. You know, like when I say, for example, when I went to meet the Taoiseach, you know, I actually didn't think too hard about that. But the day before, I kind of thought, oh shit, Vicky, what are you after getting yourself into? You know, then I'll kind of get the heebie-jeebies and go, oh Jesus Christ, am I really doing this? But then I kind of think, I talk myself down, you know. I do a lot of talking to myself in my head, and I go, no, he's only a man. He's younger than me. I have more life experience in my little finger than that man will ever have, and that's what makes me kind of do what I'm doing. I just think, no, I am more than, you know, capable of going in here and talking to this man and explaining the situation, and that's kind of what I do, you know. So, and I prepare. People don't see that. People think, oh my God, I saw you on whatever, you know, show or the Public Accounts Committee or whatever I'm on. And they say to me, how do you do this? How do you, you know, you're just able to talk and get all of this stuff out. And I'm there, yeah, well, I do a lot of preparation. You know, I mean, I do a lot of preparation. If I'm going to do a big interview, or if I'm going to do it like the Public Accounts Committee, Jesus Christ, no one's going to get me wrong. You know, I am that type of person anyway. I will prepare to the nth degree. So I will read everything I need to read about, you know, policies, procedures, legislation. And I'm lucky. I have a really good memory. I've almost got a photographic memory, so I can get stuff back out. I'll make little notes for myself as I go along. Remember to say this, remember to say that. So, you know, and I suppose I know I'm lucky that I can do that. But that's probably what's made me, you know, people I suppose look at me and think, God, you know, how did she do it? But like, there is a lot of work behind the scenes. Like, I'm always working behind the scenes, you know. When there's stuff going on, I will read about what's coming up. Like, you know, last week with the Oireachtas Health Committee, I kind of decided, you know, there's things that I decide not to comment on and things that I will, and there is no point commenting on everything because people will get pissed off, you know what I mean? You have to choose your battles. And I'm waiting for Gabriel Scally's report. You know, I kind of think at this point there's no point in kind of taking on too many things until that comes out, because I think there will be more that will come out of that. And then Ruth Morrissey's case is going to be settling soon, and there will be stuff coming out of that as well that I think will help answer a lot of questions. So I'm holding my tongue. And you have to learn how to do that too.
Yeah, it isn't a long game, but it is a long game in terms of holding your fire. It feels that you lost your friends when you were young in the car accident, and with your health and seeing other people pass away, mortality is a great reflection point to consider life, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And I do have that sense about you, even from Twitter or anywhere else, that you're someone that is engaged in life,
living.
And a lot of us that are in full health are not fully living in some ways.
And it's so true. I mean, I would even, I would have been like that myself, I have to say I've lived more in the last year than I probably have over the last, I would say even 8 years. I suppose, look, I've gone through lots of periods of depression over the last number of years, which really kind of debilitated me, So I just feel so well. It's amazing to be faced with the fact that you're going to die, and your time is limited. I mean, we all know we're going to die, and we could go out and get knocked down tomorrow, but when you actually have a time frame put in it, and I don't know how long this drug is going to work for. The reality is, I am time limited unless some new bloody drug comes that's going to cure me. But really, the reality is, I might have 12 months, I might have 24 months. If I get 2 years, I'll be delighted. And I know that sounds terrible, but, unless something new comes down the line, my time is not, I won't be here in 2 or 3 years' time. And that's hard, and there are days where, that really kind of consumes me and I get upset because, especially say last week now we had my son's communion and I'm thinking, God, will I be here for his confirmation? But then I didn't think I'd be here for his communion. So, you kind of have to just take things one day at a time. And I do. I live my life every day. I mean, I'm so delighted that I'm this well. I mean, I could be at home in bed like I was first time round, really sick, really nauseous, in a lot of pain, and I'm not. So, I'm going to live my life for as long as I can, as well as I can. And that's one of the reasons I was arguing for this drug, was because, you have a better, well, certainly me and some of the other women I know who are on it have a better quality of life. And, are we not entitled to a quality of life when you're in this situation? A lot of people, when they get to this stage and you're terminal, you're in hospice, you're in hospital, you're sick. I don't want that, I don't want to get to that point. And, if I get to that point, well, I'm not going to linger for too long, put it that way. But yeah, no, and any opportunities I get to do different things over the last year, oh my God, I've taken them. Do you know what I mean? I've gone and experienced so many different things over the last year that's just been fantastic, and it's all about making memories and living my life, and even kind of, hooking up with friends who I kind of lost touch with over stupid petty stuff, and that's what I've done, I suppose. It's kind of, mending bridges and not taking the small stuff seriously, that's it. And you know what, there's a great freedom in that, and I really think if people embraced life more and stopped worrying about the small shit, you'd actually be much happier.
Thanks so much, Vicky. I really appreciate it. And I just want to say a huge thanks to you, because the work that you're doing is for the benefit of us all, and our shock in the health system that has gone on too long. It's time we fixed it, and I say we. Yeah, and that actually is one of the big things, I suppose, for me. It's actually trying to encourage other people to like, this isn't just about me, I don't want to be doing all of this, or Stephen certainly doesn't want to be doing all of this, the other campaigners, it's about Irish people, everybody standing up and be counted and actually take responsibility for your own health and ask questions and, advocate for a better health system. We all have a responsibility to do that. And most people, when they contact me, they're looking for answers, and I give them a certain amount of help that I can, but I'm kind of telling most people, you need to do this for yourself. I can give you some idea as to how you do that, about asking questions and how to change, referral for another doctor. But you need to do this. And if you can't do that, you need to bring somebody else with you who can. And it's really, and a lot of people come back to me and say, oh my God, Vicky, you'd be so proud of me. I asked my doctor X, Y, and Z. And I said, right, well, you've done that now. Next thing is, do another thing the next time, and build it up. Because some people just don't have the confidence to challenge, and that is something that we're not good at in Ireland. You have a bad meal in a restaurant and most of us, will say, it was grand. You won't complain. So we need to get better. Yeah. And it's not grand. Yeah. It's not okay. Not grand. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's it. Let's do it. Thanks, Vicky. No problem. Hello, Rory here again. Before you go, can you please consider sharing this episode with friends, family and social media contacts? Also be sure to check out the Love and Courage podcast archive, subscribe for future episode updates and consider becoming a patron over at loveandcourage.org. As always, feel free to email me at podcast@loveandcourage.org, and you can find me, Rory McKiernan, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all those places. And I also really recommend listening to the BBC radio documentary that covers more of the particulars of Vicky's case. And please, folks, continue to highlight these issues, to raise your voice and to speak up as Vicky has encouraged us to do so. Thanks again for listening, for being part of the Love and Courage community at a time when we do need people to be bolder, to be braver in standing up, speaking out and shining a light for change in the world. Until next time.